Today is near Good Friday, and the world has gone silent because the heart of the universe stopped beating on a wooden beam. If you are watching this on the actual day of the Passion, you probably feel a specific kind of heaviness in your chest that you cannot quite explain with biology alone. But even if you are watching this months from now, during a random Tuesday in the middle of a difficult year, the truth remains the same, because every human life eventually hits a Friday that feels like the end of the world. You did not click on this video by accident, because your soul is currently looking for a reason to keep holding on to a weight that feels like it is going to crush you. We have been told for a long time that the goal of life is to avoid pain and to find the shortest path to comfort. But the man hanging on the hill of Golgotha is telling a completely different story. He is showing us that the cross is not a mistake or a sign that God has abandoned you, but it is the most sophisticated piece of spiritual machinery ever designed. I want to talk to you today as a friend who knows what it feels like to stand at the edge of exhaustion and wonder if the sacrifice is actually worth the price. We are going to look at the anatomy of sacrifice and deconstruct why your specific suffering is the very thing God is using to make you unbreakable. You cannot escape the cross because the cross is the only doorway to a version of yourself that is eternal. If you have been trying to run away from the difficulties of your life, or if you have been praying for God to take away the pressure, I want you to listen very carefully to what is coming next, because the weight you are carrying is actually the proof of your value in the kingdom. Stop looking for the exit and start looking for the purpose, because once you understand how the cross works, you will never look at your trials the same way again. The heavy wood is not there to break your back, but it is there to strengthen your spirit for a glory that the world cannot understand. We are about to enter the most uncomfortable part of the truth, which is why your comfort has been your greatest enemy all along. We live in a culture that has tried to sanitize the gospel until it looks like a cheap self-help manual designed to make you feel good about yourself without ever asking you to change anything. This is the great deception of our age, because we have been sold a version of Christianity that promised us the crown without the thorns and the kingdom without the cost. Most of the marketing you see for spirituality today is focused on how to get more of what you want, while the reality of the faith is actually about how to lose the parts of yourself that are keeping you from being free. We have turned the most revolutionary event in human history into a comfortable consumer product. And that is why so many people are falling apart the moment life gets difficult. If your religion does not have a cross at the center of it, then you are not following the man from Nazareth, because he never promised his friends a vacation. He promised them a battle, and he promised them a transformation that would require every ounce of their courage. Think about the word sacrifice for a moment, because we usually use it to mean losing something or being deprived of a pleasure. But the Latin root of the word is sacrificium, which literally means to make something sacred. When you offer your pain and your struggle to God, you are not just suffering, but you are actually participating in a divine engineering project. In the letter to the Romans, chapter 12, verse 1, we are commanded to present our bodies as a living sacrifice, which is holy and acceptable to God. This is not a metaphor for a Sunday morning feeling, but it is a blueprint for how you handle your Monday morning exhaustion and your Friday afternoon failures. A living sacrifice is someone who understands that their life is no longer their own property, but it has been signed over to the Creator for a specific purpose. The reason you feel so much friction right now is because the world is trying to pull you back into the comfort of the status quo, while the Spirit is trying to push you into the fire of refinement. You cannot be forged in a room that is temperature-controlled, and you cannot be built for eternity if you are only focused on the temporary convenience of the present moment. We have to stop apologizing for the difficulty of the path and start recognizing that the difficulty is the point. If the way was easy, then everyone would do it. But the narrow gate is reserved for those who have the grit to stay in the furnace until the dross is burned away. You are not being punished by the weight of your responsibilities, but you are being trusted with a heavy load, because the builder knows the quality of the materials he has placed inside your soul. We need to dismantle the myth that a holy life is a painless life, because that lie is what makes people quit just before the miracle happens. The cross is not an optional accessory for the Christian life, but it is the very engine that drives our progress toward the resurrection. But as we look closer at this engine, we need to understand the actual mechanics of how it operates and why it requires 4 specific pillars to hold up the weight of your entire existence. To understand how your suffering becomes a masterpiece, you have to look at the 4 specific pillars that hold up the anatomy of sacrifice, because without these elements the cross is just a tragedy instead of a triumph. The first pillar is the weight which we often call the load. And in the life of Jesus, this was the collective weight of every human betrayal and every dark secret ever committed. In your life, the load is the heavy responsibility you carry for your children, or your business, or the debts that keep you awake at night. You have to realize that a heavy load is not a sign that you are doing something wrong, but it is a sign that you are carrying something that actually matters to the kingdom. The second pillar is the wood which represents the rough and splintered instrument of your trial. The wood is not smooth and it is not polished, because it is made of the raw materials of your daily life, like a boss who treats you unfairly, or a spouse who does not understand your heart, or a body that is failing you. This wood is designed to be uncomfortable, because its job is to rub against your pride until the surface of your ego is worn away. Then we come to the third pillar, which is the nails, and this is the part of the anatomy that most people try to avoid at all costs. The nails represent the point of immobility, where you can no longer run away or negotiate your way out of the situation. You are pinned down by a reality that you cannot change, and it is exactly in this state of being stuck that the most profound spiritual work is done. When you are nailed to your cross, you stop trying to save yourself, and you finally start looking towards the one who can actually save you. The fourth pillar is the blood which represents the actual cost of the sacrifice, because there is no such thing as a free transformation. Something has to die in order for something new to be born. And on the Friday of your life, it is the old man who is bleeding out so that the new man can breathe. In the Gospel, according to John chapter 15, verse 13, we are told that greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. This laying down of life is not a poetic sentiment, but it is a literal anatomical reality of the cross, where you surrender your preferences and your safety for the sake of the mission. If you are feeling the sharp edges of these pillars today, I want you to stop asking God to take them away and start asking Him what He is building with them. You are being held up by a structure that is designed to support the weight of a glory you cannot yet see. But even as you understand these pillars, you might still be tempted to believe that there is a way to bypass this process altogether. And that is exactly where the most dangerous lie begins to take root in your mind. You can try to outrun your cross, but you will only find yourself exhausted in a different desert, because suffering is the one universal tax that every human being is forced to pay. The mistake we make is thinking that if we just change our circumstances, or our relationships, or our bank accounts, we can finally find a place where the wood of the cross cannot reach us. But the cross is not a geographic location, and it is not a temporary phase of bad luck, because it is the fundamental structure of reality in a fallen world. The only choice you actually have is what you are going to do with the pain that is already coming for you. In the second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 4, verse 17, we are told that our light and momentary affliction is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison. Notice that the text does not say the affliction is a distraction from the glory, but it says the affliction is actually preparing the glory. This is the difference between secular misery and sacred sacrifice, because for the worldling, suffering is a dead end, but for the pilgrim, suffering is an investment. You are currently putting down a deposit on a version of yourself that can survive the fire of judgment and the weight of eternity. Think about a piece of rough iron that is being hammered on an anvil. To the iron, it feels like a senseless attack, but to the blacksmith, it is the only way to remove the air bubbles and the weaknesses that would cause the blade to shatter in battle. Every difficult conversation you have to have, and every night you spend in prayer when you would rather be sleeping, is a hammer blow that is making your soul more dense and more durable. You are being tempered to hold a strength that the world cannot offer and that the enemy cannot break. If you were not meant for a great purpose, you would not be receiving this much attention from the hammer. The very fact that you are being pressed so hard is the evidence that the Creator is making something of immense value out of your life. Do not resent the heat of the furnace or the hardness of the anvil, because they are the only tools capable of turning your potential into a reality. This process is violent and it is uncomfortable, because the old version of yourself has to be crushed to make room for the new man that Jesus is calling out of the tomb. You are being forced to decide if you want to be a comfortable coward or a crucified king. There is no middle ground on the road to Jerusalem, and there is no way to reach the Sunday morning without enduring the long silence of the Friday afternoon. But as you accept the inevitability of this weight, you need to realize that there is a specific posture you must adopt if you are going to carry this load all the way to the top, without collapsing under the sheer magnitude of the task. The way you carry your cross is just as important as the cross itself, because your posture reveals the King you serve. Most people drag their feet through the dirt like prisoners of war, because they see their struggle as a cosmic mistake that should not be happening to them. But if you are a follower of the crucified King, you must understand that you are not a victim of your circumstances, but you are a volunteer for the kingdom. In the first letter of Peter chapter 2 verse 21, we are told that to this you have been called because Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example, so that you might follow in his steps. He did not go to the mountain of death with a slumped back or a hesitant step because he knew that the hill of the skull was actually the footstool of his throne. This is the royal posture that you need to adopt today, when the world is laughing at your fast or when your own body is begging you to quit. You have to straighten your back and look your trial in the eye with the confidence of someone who already knows the final victory. A victim asks why this is happening to me, but a pilgrim asks what is being built in me through this. When you change your posture, you change the physics of the weight, because the cross is easier to carry when it is held upright with dignity than when it is dragged behind you in the mud of self-pity. You are being invited to stop acting like a slave to your emotions and start acting like a member of the royal household of God. This does not mean that the pain will disappear, but it means that the pain will no longer have the power to define who you are. You are a tabernacle of the living God, and you carry the Creator of the stars within your own chest. If the Master of the universe is not panicking about the Friday afternoon, then you do not have permission to panic either. You are being trained to walk through the fire without smelling like smoke, because your focus is not on the heat of the flames, but on the face of the one who is walking beside you. But as you adjust your posture, you must also prepare for the moment when the lights go out completely, because the most difficult part of the anatomy of sacrifice is the absolute silence of the tomb. The silence of the tomb is the most terrifying part of the anatomy of sacrifice, because it feels like a cold and clinical failure. When the stone was rolled over the entrance of the grave on that first Friday evening, the disciples did not see a hidden victory, but they saw the total end of their hopes. You will experience this exact silence in your own journey when you have sacrificed your comfort and given your best effort. And yet the world remains dark, and the answer to your prayer is nowhere to be found. This is the period of the divine gestation, where the seed of your sacrifice is breaking open in the soil of your soul to produce a harvest you cannot yet imagine. You have to trust that the silence of God is not the absence of God, but it is the focused concentration of the Creator who is finishing his masterpiece in the dark. The Friday of your life is the price of the Sunday morning, and there is no resurrection for the one who refuses to die to themselves. In the Gospel, according to Matthew chapter 28, verse 6, the angel delivers the message that changes human history by saying he is not here, for he has risen as he said. This is the ultimate validation of every splinter and every nail and every drop of blood that was shed on the hill. The cross was not a mistake, but it was the necessary path to the empty tomb. Finally, you have to decide if you are going to be a spectator of this story or a participant in this glory. You were not created to live a small and comfortable life, but you were created to carry the weight of a kingdom that is not of this world. If this message has resonated with the circuit Jesus has built inside of you, then I am inviting you to join our community here at the Pilgrim's Path. We are building a brotherhood and a sisterhood of souls who are not afraid of the wood and the iron of the cross. Subscribe to this channel and share this video with someone who is currently struggling under the weight of their own Friday, because they need to know that the heavy air is the presence of the King. Leave a comment below with the phrase, "I will not drop my cross," as a public declaration of your intent to finish this race with honor. We are moving toward the light of the resurrection together, and the darkness of this day is the very thing that makes the morning sun so brilliant. Stay firm in your posture and stay loyal to your king, because the stone is about to move, and the life that is coming out of your struggle is going to be unrecognizable to the world. I will see you in the next video as we enter the joy of the empty tomb.